My name is Kaylee Dawson. I'm 29 years old. That day I stood in an ivory wedding dress, holding a knife to cut the three-tiered cake covered in fresh flowers beside Logan, the man I chose to marry, the only one who ever really saw me instead of looking past me. The reception hall was filled with music and laughter, but my heart felt frozen. Because no one from my family showed up. Not my dad. Not my mom. Not even Amber, the sister who once promised she'd never leave my side. And certainly not Chloe, the best friend I thought would always be by me on the most important day of my life. They had all vanished, as if I had never existed. I must have asked myself 100 times, what could have made them all turn away at once? Until the moment I cut into that first layer of cake and the phone hidden in the pocket of my dress buzzed. A notification appeared, unusual footage playback, 9 a.m. residence. I tapped to open it, and what I saw tore apart everything I thought I understood about my family. Have you ever been betrayed by the very people you needed most? Have you ever had the courage to face the truth behind those warm hugs that weren't real? Leave a comment if you've ever felt like the whole world turned its back on you. Hit like if you believe the truth will always find its way to the surface. And don't forget to follow the channel to hear the rest. Because this story is just beginning. I grew up in Salem, Oregon, a small town with damp winters and springtime that always smelled like rain. Our house was in a quiet neighborhood just a few blocks from downtown, where my parents ran a secondhand bookstore called Willow Pages. It was a place blanketed in the dust of time, with bowed wooden shelves and a little bell that rang every time the door opened. To outsiders, my family must have looked like a painting from a simpler time. A quiet book-loving dad, a gentle mother behind the register, and two little girls in floral dresses every Easter Sunday. But in that picture I was always in the background. Amber, my older sister, was the one they called our little angel, Mommy's treasure, or the Dawson family pride. She was 3 years older than me with naturally golden hair, dimples, and a charm that made everyone look twice. Amber knew how to walk into a room and shift the air. I only knew how to walk in quietly and find the seat closest to the bookshelf. By the time I was 8, I had already memorized the entire end of Green Gables series, while Amber was learning ballet and playing the lead princess in our church play. I remember the day I scored a perfect 100 on an advanced math test. I ran home with the paper in hand, almost yelling with joy. My dad didn't look up from his newspaper. My mom just said, "Good job. But don't get too full of yourself, Kaylee. Amber just got cast in the spring recital, did you hear?" From that day on, I learned something. My achievements were only worth celebrating if they didn't outshine my sisters. My parents weren't cruel people. They worked hard and always made sure we had enough. But their love had conditions. They loved in a way that only those who fit into their ideal family picture were cherished. And that picture never had me in the center. I used to think maybe I just wasn't gentle enough. I didn't like dresses, I hated makeup, I couldn't make small talk. I loved math, journaling, drawing mind maps, and analyzing patterns. But in my home, intelligence wasn't something encouraged. Smart girls are harder to marry off. My mom once said when she saw me dragging home an armful of calculus books during the summer before 9th grade. I remember vividly the day I received my full-ride scholarship offer from Stanford. I was in the back room of the bookstore after a shift, my hands still stained with ink from a book I had just rebound. I opened the email and saw the words, "Congratulations. You've been admitted with full scholarship." I cried. I ran straight home and knocked on my parents' bedroom door. My mom was arranging flowers, my dad reviewing the day's ledgers. I said, "I got a full scholarship to Stanford. They accepted me." My mom looked up. "Well, good. Keep working hard. But don't forget to help your sister with the spring show. We're all going, you know." That was it. No hug. No tears. Not even a proper congratulations. 3 days later, Amber was crowned first runner-up in the county beauty pageant. The whole family went out to dinner to celebrate. Dad ordered wine, Mom had gifts for the judges, and I sat at the edge of the table watching my sister get toasted and praised. That night, no one mentioned Stanford. No one asked when I'd be leaving. I felt like an uninvited guest at my own family's celebration. I started to realize I could never compete with Amber in my parents' eyes. No matter what I achieved, Amber only had to smile at a camera and everyone would melt. And worse, Amber knew it. She wasn't cruel. She knew how to appear sweet, knew how to praise me in front of others. "Kaylee's brilliant," she once said at a dinner party. You should see her talk to engineers. She has them wrapped around her finger. But she said it with a half smile, like I was some amusing creature she had trained. One time I was wrapping a birthday gift for our mom when Amber walked into my room without knocking. "You're giving her this?" She picked up the psychology book I had bought. "She won't read it. Mom likes perfume." Then she walked out, leaving me sitting there, deflated. I started to withdraw. I stopped sharing my accomplishments. I stopped opening up. Every time I tried, I'd hear things like, "You should be more cheerful, don't be so sensitive," or, "Everyone feels left out sometimes." Over time, I learned to stay quiet. I locked every hurt into a little box in my chest and just kept going. But silence doesn't erase emptiness. I had recurring dreams, always the same. I was on a stage calling out to each member of my family, but no one turned back. I'd scream, but they kept walking. And I just stood there frozen. Maybe it was in those empty spaces that I learned how to rely on myself. I got my first job at 15, saved every penny until I could finally leave Salem. I learned how to fix leaking pipes, how to read lease agreements, how to survive in a strange city without anyone behind me. I used to think that if I became successful enough, my parents would come around. If I gave them enough reason to be proud, they'd claim me as their daughter with real pride. I was wrong. I was just Kaylee, the one behind the curtain, the one carrying my sister's bags, the one paying the power bill no one asked about. And maybe because I'd spent so long being the shadow in my own family, I never saw it coming when, on my wedding day, that shadow would become the center of a drama I never wrote. I left Salem right after graduation. Flew straight from the ceremony to Seattle and stepped into adulthood with a job in AI research for a young but ambitious tech startup. I worked 12-hour days, sometimes crashing at the office with cold coffee and blinking screens of half-written code. 3 years later, I was promoted to Chief Technology Officer at just 26. Some called me a prodigy, others said I was lucky. But I knew the sleepless nights, the calls home asking my mom whether I should quit or push through, and her only reply, "Amber's prepping for a local brand photo shoot, Kaylee. Can I call you later?" Still, I sent money home regularly. When my dad had a heart attack and needed a stent, I paid for everything. The bookstore owner, my mom, called Amber first, then sent me a short text, "Thanks." The money came just in time. When she retold the story to her friends, there was no mention of me. Only, "Thank God Amber found a good doctor and handled it all." I read that in a Facebook post, alongside a photo of Amber holding Dad's hand in the hospital. Caption: "A daughter by her father's side in hard times. Family is everything." I didn't feel sad. At least I told myself I didn't. I reminded myself that I had a role. I was the one behind the scenes as usual. Someone had to do the quiet work. Seattle was a damp city but never felt cold. I grew to love it just as I had learned to love my own silence. I bought my first apartment on the 6th floor of an old building not far from Lake Union. I installed my own desk, hung artwork in the living room, and placed a large armchair by the window, my favorite reading spot after work. My life in every way was stable and intentional. Sometimes I still return to Salem. I never stay longer than 2 days, just enough for the sake of politeness. I bring gifts, usually something for the whole family, but my mother always opens the one picked by Amber first. One evening, I placed an expensive box of artisan pastries on the kitchen counter. My mother glanced at it and asked, "Doesn't smell as good as the strawberry ones Amber usually brings. What's this made of?" I replied gently, "Chocolate and sea salt. Organic." She nodded but didn't open it. So I didn't give up. I kept sending money during the holidays, bought new books for the store, and even sponsored a bookkeeping course when my mom said she wanted to modernize their inventory system. But every time I called, she barely stayed on the line for 3 minutes before saying she had something urgent. And every time Amber called, I could hear her laughter echoing through the receiver. I started writing everything down, almost like a form of self-healing. I had a black notebook, unnamed, where I documented the tiniest things. Today Mom called me Amber by mistake. Today Dad asked if I had a boyfriend yet or if I was still dry as high school. Today Amber posted a picture of the bookstore with the caption, "Always here with Mom and Dad, where my heart belongs." I wasn't angry anymore. Just tired. One spring I came home right before Easter. I brought a special gift. A full website design for my parents' bookstore, complete with 6 months of maintenance and online marketing. I excitedly walked them through each feature. I had even bought the domain and prepared a demo. Amber sat next to me, reapplying her lipstick and glancing at her watch every few seconds. My mother finally said, but most of our customers are older. They don't really use the internet. Besides, your dad doesn't like change. But thanks, sweetie. That was thoughtful. Amber gave my shoulder a light pat and smiled with that pitying tone. I know you do something complicated in tech or whatever. But books should stay old-fashioned. That's what gives them soul, right? I nodded. Closed my laptop. Everything went back to its usual place. But I still held on to hope. I hoped that one day when I had a child, my mom would come visit without me having to ask. I hoped that someday when I won a major industry award, my dad would say something more than just, congratulations. I hoped that maybe, just once, I'd be the first person they called when they needed someone, not Amber. I kept living. Kept growing. Kept standing firm like an old pine in a storm. But deep inside, I was still that little girl standing in the family room, holding up a Stanford acceptance letter, waiting for a hug that never came. And I never imagined that the acknowledgement I longed for wouldn't come from a compliment or a hug, but from a betrayal, cruel enough to outweigh every silent moment that came before it. I met Logan Parker on a late autumn afternoon at a fundraising event at St. Mercy Hospital in Seattle. I had been invited as a tech sponsor for a new post-surgical recovery monitoring system my company had just begun piloting. I didn't usually attend events like these. I never liked being in the spotlight or shaking hands just to be polite. But that day I went to honor the medical teams who had worked tirelessly through the pandemic. And maybe because a small part of me was just too tired of silence. Logan approached me while I was standing alone at the drink station, holding a cup of hot tea, my eyes fixed on the model of the oxygen tracker I had just presented. He was dressed in a dark green military uniform with a medical corps badge on his lapel, calm demeanor, grounded posture, and a presence that was hard to ignore. So you're the one behind the device that kept our post-op unit from falling apart the last 6 months? He asked with a deep, warm voice and a smile. I turned a bit surprised. I'm part of the team. There's a whole group behind it. But you're the only one standing in front of me right now, he said, not flirtatiously, just like he'd stated a simple truth. I wasn't used to conversations like that. There was no flashy admiration, no condescending stares like I often got in tech circles. Logan looked at me like I was someone worth listening to, worth noticing. Not because I was dazzling, but because I was present in that moment. We talked for 30 minutes without me realizing the time. Logan spoke about his missions in Afghanistan, about emergency surgeries in field hospitals with barely any supplies, about what it felt like to return to a country so used to having everything. He didn't complain, didn't grandstand, just shared like someone who had seen too much and learned to appreciate the small things. I've seen people with no name give everything they had to save someone else, he said, gently tapping his lukewarm coffee. Since I came back, I've started noticing the ones who never get named. You're one of them. I looked at him, smiled, a little unsure. You just met me. How do you know I'm nameless? I don't need to know your name to see you're standing at the edge of the room. I didn't respond. But something inside me quietly shifted, like a dislocated bone sliding back into place. We started dating slowly. Logan never rushed anything. Every time we met, he chose places that weren't too loud. A bookstore cafe, a local art exhibit, or a short walk around Green Lake. He didn't ask questions like, "Why aren't you married yet?" Or, "How can someone like you still be single?" He asked things like, "What was the most exhausting part of your week?" Or, "What book did you love most as a kid?" I told him about A Wrinkle in Time, how I used to wish I could travel back in time and redo those evenings when I tried so hard to make my parents proud. He didn't comment, just quietly held my hand and said, "I won't let you be invisible." I'd heard a lot of promises in my life, but none had ever been spoken with such clarity in someone's eyes. We dated for nearly 2 years. Logan became the first person I ever brought home without hesitation, even though I knew Amber would size him up from his clothes to his career. But Logan was steady. He shook my dad's hand, greeted my mom with the soft southern lilt he got from his grandmother, and said to Amber, "Kaylee talks a lot about you. She's lucky to have a sister." Simple words, but heavy with intention. I saw Amber pause, caught off guard. Even though my family didn't fully embrace him, Logan never made me choose between them and him. He simply said, "I'll stand beside you, no matter who doesn't show up." Then came the proposal. And no one could have predicted how he'd do it. One Saturday afternoon, he brought me back to the old campus library where I used to work during college. The quiet refuge that had saved me through years of loneliness. When I stepped in, every bookshelf was decorated with handwritten sticky notes, each one a reason why he loved me. You read every instruction manual. You remember side characters' birthdays. You fix systems no one notices, but you change everything. At the librarian's desk was a donation box he'd used as an excuse. I opened it and saw a velvet ring box nestled between Jane Eyre and Dune. When I turned around, Logan was on one knee, the soft yellow light casting his shadow across the wood floor. "Kaylee Dawson, you may not need anyone's recognition, but I see you every single day. You changed my life. Made me want to stay still, not run from my past. Will you walk with me, not so others see it, but so we feel it for ourselves?" I couldn't speak. I just nodded, smiling through the tears before they even fully formed. It was a storybook proposal, but not the kind with princes or castles. It was the kind written by two people who thought they'd walk alone forever, until they found each other. That same evening, I called my mom. Still the old landline number at the bookstore, still her voice after 3 rings. "Willow Pages, Evelyn speaking." I nearly smiled at the familiarity. At the fleeting moment, I forgot all the distance that had ever stood between us. "Mom, it's me. Kaylee." She paused. Then said, "Is something wrong, honey? The store's kind of busy today." "I have good news. Logan proposed tonight." I said yes. I could hear the chimes tapping against the glass behind her, like even the air stood still for a moment. But all she said was, "Oh." After a few seconds of silence, I asked, "Mom, are you okay?" She let out a soft sigh. "Actually, Amber just broke up last week. She's really upset. She needs space. I don't want her to feel left behind." I thought I had misheard. I had called to share my engagement news, and my mom responded like I was reporting a shipping error. "I understand." That's what I said, even though in my heart I didn't understand anything at all. That night, Logan noticed me twirling the ring on my finger over and over. "Is everything okay?" I smiled. "Yeah. Mom's just a little worried about Amber. She just went through a breakup." He looked at me for a long moment. "Are you sad?" I shook my head, but I couldn't meet his eyes. I was afraid if I looked too long, my feelings would spill out and I wouldn't be able to gather them back in. 2 weeks later, I sat down to write the wedding invitations. I had chosen an ivory paper with embossed floral patterns, our names, mine and Logan's, printed by hand in classic copper ink. I poured my heart into every word, every address, every line I wrote. I made a special one for my parents and Amber, still addressing it to "my beloved parents and sister." I sent it via express delivery. 3 days later, hearing nothing from anyone on my side of the family, I called. This time my mom picked up after just one ring. "Did you receive the wedding invitation?" "Yes." I waited for congratulations, a question about the venue or the date, maybe even something about the dress. But my mom only added, "We'll check the calendar. Depends on work and a bunch of other things. You know how it is." I swallowed a sigh. I sent it early so everyone would have time to plan. Yeah. But that month's the local book festival. Your dad and I signed up for a booth at the start of the year. Not easy to cancel, you know. "What about Amber?" She hasn't said anything. But I think she needs time. She's still recovering from the breakup." I let out a small laugh, cold enough that I didn't even recognize my own tone. "She's heartbroken and I'm getting married. But somehow, I'm the problem." Mom didn't answer. "I just want you there. Dad there. Even if just for 1 hour." "Kaylee," she began, but I had already hung up. A week later, Amber posted a photo on Instagram, sitting at a lakeside cafe, cappuccino in hand, with a sad poem in the caption about feeling lost. The comments were filled with supportive messages, including one from my mom. "We're always here for you. Stay strong, my brave girl." I stared at that line for a long time. I didn't need to be posted about. I didn't need a heartfelt essay from my mom about her youngest daughter. I just needed a message. A phone call. A real presence. I kept wondering when it would finally be my turn to be the one the family stood up for. Logan saw me sitting quietly by the window, eyes fixed on my phone. He didn't ask anything. He just came over and gently placed a hand on my shoulder. If you don't invite them, I'll understand. I shook my head. No. I can't be the one who cuts them out of my wedding day. If they don't show up, at least I'll know the fault wasn't mine. He nodded. Then I'll stand by your side no matter who's on the other side. I sent a second round of invitations by email, attaching every detail. Maps, schedule, even guest arrival times. No one replied. Not a single confirmation. Every night I opened the guest list again, scanning each name one by one. The line for Kaylee Dawson's family remained blank. I couldn't bring myself to delete it. I still hoped. Even though I knew that hope in my family hadn't been planted with real seeds in a long time. It was just the shadow of a tree on the wall. You could see it, but you could never reach out and touch it. I met Chloe during freshman orientation at Stanford. She sat right next to me in the large auditorium that day, lightly curled hair, a slightly faded denim jacket, and a smile that made strangers feel at ease. While everyone was still awkwardly looking around for someone to talk to, I already felt like I could speak to Chloe as if we had known each other forever. We spent all 4 college years side by side. From all-night study sessions to early mornings sipping coffee on campus lawns, Chloe was the one who told me to rest when I worked through meals, who pushed me out of my comfort zone whenever I hesitated to try something new. When my family didn't show up to my graduation, Chloe was the one who took pictures of me at the podium and shouted, "She's the star of the department, you hear that, everyone?" We kept in touch after college even though we worked in different cities. Chloe moved to Portland to be a legal assistant at a small law firm and I stayed in Seattle. Every few months, one of us would hop on a long-distance bus to meet up for a weekend, catch up and share life updates. When Logan and I started planning the wedding, there was only one person I thought of for my maid of honor. Chloe. Not out of obligation, but because I genuinely wanted her by my side on the most important day of my life. "You sure you don't want someone closer?" she asked when I called, half joking but with a slight hesitation at the end. "I want it to be you. Who knows me better?" Chloe chuckled on the phone, her voice a little husky as usual. "All right then. I'll be there." No doubt. During the first few weeks of planning, Chloe was full of excitement. She sent me dress ideas, suggested flower arrangements, and even proposed making a custom playlist for the reception. Every time I felt overwhelmed, she'd text, "Don't let stress drown out the joy. You're marrying someone who truly loves you." Those words helped me breathe a little easier. But gradually, Chloe started to pull away. She canceled the first dress fitting, saying her boss needed her for an extra weekend shift. She didn't join the video call to plan the bachelorette party, citing internet issues. I didn't get upset. I understood how adult life could get messy, and Chloe had always been dedicated to her work. I just assumed that when the big day got closer, things would settle down. Once, I texted her asking about the bridesmaid dress color we had picked. She replied almost 3 days later, "Oh, sorry, things have been a little hectic at home. Everything's good though, don't worry." That phrase, "a little hectic at home," started showing up a lot. Enough that I began to feel uneasy. I didn't know if it was just instinct or if I'd simply grown too used to being left behind. So when someone started stepping back, I immediately feared losing them too. I told Logan about it one night while we were folding thank you cards for the guests. "Maybe she's just going through something personal," he said gently, like always. "If it's Chloe, I trust she's not trying to hurt you." I used to think so too. And now, I don't even know anymore. I just feel cold. With only 7 days until the wedding, Chloe texted me a little after 9 p.m. "I'm so sorry, Kaylee. I won't be able to make it to the wedding. There's an emergency at home and I can't leave. Hope you understand. Truly sorry." I stared at the message, unable to read it a second time. I didn't know what emergency meant. I didn't know why someone who once promised, "I'll definitely be there," would cancel so close to the day without even a call or a clear explanation. I typed back a single line, "I understand. Hope everything's okay. Thank you for everything." But as I hit send, I felt completely hollow. I thought I had gotten used to the way people I loved disappear without warning. But with Chloe, it felt different. Logan knew something was wrong the moment he saw my red eyes. He didn't ask why. He just pulled me into his arms. I didn't cry, but something in my chest clenched like a knot I couldn't untangle. "She's the one person I thought would never do this," I said after nearly 10 minutes of silence. Maybe she didn't want to. Maybe she had no other choice. Or maybe she just didn't prioritize me. Logan didn't argue. He only tightened his grip on my hand as if to say, I wouldn't do that. I tried to stay focused the next few days. I replaced Chloe with a colleague, called the florist to change the bouquet count, rearranged the seating chart. Everything moved forward like Chloe had never been part of the plan. But I couldn't stop thinking about that night we sketched out wedding dreams in our little Stanford apartment as students. Chloe once said, at your wedding I'll be standing right next to you. Honor pledge. And I believed her. Not because of the promise but because she always kept her word. I didn't realize. Everything started shifting from that moment. And I hadn't yet understood, or maybe hadn't dared to face, what had been quietly unraveling behind my back. The wedding took place under warm golden lights at Edgewater Hall, right on the shore of Lake Washington. White lilies and soft purple asters formed delicate wreaths down the long tables. Soft music played, guests chatted, laughter filled the elegant yet cozy space. I tried my best to smile as Logan and I made our rounds, thanking each guest. He gently squeezed my hand every time he saw my eyes drift toward the family seats, still empty. The seats meant for my parents, for Amber. None of them showed up. And Chloe wasn't there either. You okay? Logan whispered as we stepped toward the cake table, about to do the much-anticipated cake cutting. I'm not sure. But I'm ready to cut the cake, I said with a small smile, though the emptiness in my chest hadn't lifted. Applause rose as Logan placed his hand over mine, both of us holding the silver knife, about to cut the first slice. Just then I felt my phone vibrate in the pocket of my dress. I was about to ignore it, but the screen showed an alert from our security app. Unusual motion detected, replay? Along with the exact address of our apartment in Seattle. My chest tightened. With everything already off balance, this didn't feel like just a coincidence. I excused myself and slipped out to the hallway. I opened the video from the living room camera. The footage was clear. I froze in place. Amber was in the frame, wearing the same dress she'd worn on Easter last year, sitting cross-legged on my sofa. My mother, in her familiar beige knit cardigan, was flipping through wedding envelopes on the table. And leaning into my bookshelf as if searching for something was Chloe. I couldn't believe my eyes. Do you think she hid any wedding gift somewhere? Chloe asked, half joking. My mother frowned. Don't mess things up too much. Remember to put everything back in place. Amber opened an envelope, pulled out a card and a few bills. Someone sent $800. Not bad. Chloe laughed loudly. She doesn't need that wedding dress. Do you think Logan will actually show? Amber shrugged. Definitely not. If he's smart, he'll realize Kaylee was never meant for someone like him. I felt the air leave my lungs, my fingers trembling around the phone. The footage continued. Amber opened a small box, then shook her head. This is stuff she kept from Stanford. All junk. Chloe picked up a notebook. My old college journal, the one I filled with thoughts, notes, and all the nights I cried about being ignored by my family. Look, she flipped a page. She wrote Logan's name 12 times. Oh God, classic obsessive girl energy. Their laughter echoed through the phone, cutting straight into my chest. I dropped onto a hallway bench, phone still clutched in my hand, eyes locked on the screen. I watched my mother get up, adjust the tablecloth, then say, we shouldn't stay too long. If anyone asks, just say we thought Kaylee wasn't hosting anything, so we came to look through old stuff. Chloe checked the time, brushed her hair in the wall mirror. Amber's party starts in 30 minutes. Let's go. Amber glanced toward the camera, not directly but almost purposefully, then smirked. Hope she enjoys the private wedding she picked. The video ended. The screen faded to black. I sat still, hand frozen on the phone, heart filled with noise I couldn't silence. I had thought, Chloe was just busy with family. I had thought, my mom was just distant, maybe still holding on to some unspoken grudge. I had thought, Amber was selfish but not cruel. I was wrong. Kaylee. Logan's voice came from the end of the hallway, his tall frame blocking the warm lights of the reception behind him. Are you okay? I looked up at him, my throat dry. I held out my phone, unable to speak. Logan took the phone, watched the entire video in silence. He didn't move for 5 minutes, his face hardening with a look I'd never seen on him before. When the screen went dark, he spoke one sentence, low but clear. What do you want to do about this? I didn't answer right away. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt something thin, like ice, shatter inside me, leaving behind a hollow space with no name. I don't know yet. But I need to go back in there. I need to stand beside you. And they don't get to ruin this day for me. No one does. Logan nodded. Then let's go back in. And whatever you decide afterward, I'll be right here. I stood up, slipped my phone into my clutch, and smoothed my hair with a trembling hand. On the way back to the reception hall, I passed the mirror hanging in the hallway. In it, I saw a woman in a wedding dress walking slowly, not smiling like before, but no longer with her head bowed. She wasn't completely happy, but she was beginning to see clearly which faces were real and which ones she'd chosen to trust for far too long. We returned to the reception as if we had never stepped away. Every eye followed us as Logan gently squeezed my hand and led us to the center of the hall to cut the cake. I smiled, even nodded politely to some of his relatives. But deep inside, everything had changed. That night, after the party had ended, once the guest had gone and Logan was thanking the event staff, I sat alone in the bridal suite, slowly removing the pins from my hair. The warm light reflected off the mirror in front of me, casting a quiet, almost unfamiliar version of myself. I took out my phone, opened the security system, and for the first time since moving into that apartment, I checked the access logs. Within the last 7 days before the wedding, there had been 2 entries using the manual code, the old one that only Amber, Chloe, and I knew. One was 3 days before the wedding. The other was that morning. I tapped into the storage log and found a series of images captured by the front door camera. Chloe entering the code, Amber right behind her holding a paper bag. Neither of them hesitated. Neither looked like they thought they were doing anything wrong. I took screenshots of each frame and sent them to Logan with just one sentence. I think it's time we knew the whole truth. Logan called me immediately. You sure you don't want to wait until morning? His voice was hoarse after a long day. I won't be able to sleep unless I know. He paused for a few seconds. Neither will I. We met again in the hotel room where he was staying with his best man. Logan set his laptop on the table and opened a string of messages. Ones he had saved, thinking they were just random at the time. 3 weeks ago, I got a strange email from your address, Logan said as he opened the message. But the sender name wasn't yours. The screen showed a thread titled, About the Wedding. Please listen one more time. The content was hard to believe. I feel like I'm panicking about everything. I'm not sure I want to go through with it. I think you don't really love me, you just pity me. My mom was right. I'm not good enough for anyone. And don't reply. I'll delete everything. Go ahead and get married if you want. But I won't be there. My hands clenched into fists. My voice cracked. I never wrote that. Never. Logan nodded. I thought it was odd too. But when I called, you didn't answer. Then after that, you acted normal like nothing had happened. I figured maybe you were just stressed about the wedding and lashing out. I said nothing. Not because he doubted me, but because I realized people like Amber and Chloe knew exactly where to strike. The old wounds I tried to keep hidden, the parts of me I worked so hard to lock away, they used those against me from the inside out. Did they send anything else? I asked. Amber messaged me directly a week later. Logan pulled up his text. A conversation appeared with Amber's name at the top. I'm only saying this because I care about Kaylee's happiness. But I'm really worried. I saw her have panic attacks back in college. She locked herself in her room for a whole week once. Didn't go out, didn't talk to anyone. I'm not sure she's stable enough to be a wife. But you deserve to know. I jumped up. She's lying. I've never been like that. I've had low points, been tired sometimes, but I've never had a breakdown or needed treatment. Logan looked at me with the same steady gaze. I know. It's just reading those words in the middle of the night when you weren't around, when I had no idea what was going on. I started to doubt my own instincts. I sat back down, my eyes stinging. She didn't just want to ruin the wedding. She wanted you to leave me, so I'd think I was the reason everything fell apart. Logan took my hand. But you didn't fall apart. You're here. You just cut a wedding cake with me. And if you want, I'll help you undo everything they've done. I took a deep breath. What about Chloe? Logan nodded and opened the RSVP section from our wedding planner system. I thought some of your friends were just busy. But after checking the list again today, at least 8 of your old friends declined. I followed up, and 3 of them said they never got the second invite. A chill ran down my back. I used my old Gmail account to send out the second round. Chloe knows the old password. I think she logged in, canceled the RSVPs from your closest friends. Left the ones who weren't that close so it wouldn't raise suspicion. She didn't touch the RSVPs from your side of the family, because that would have been too obvious, I said slowly, like reading back a long-lost code. I looked at the screen. A list of names appeared, the names I should have been hugging today, laughing with, hearing genuine congratulations from. Chloe stole that from me. And worse, she did it using the trust one gave her. I don't know what turns a friend who stood by your side for years into someone who betrays you at your happiest moment. But now I wasn't looking for explanations. I only knew one thing with absolute clarity. They never wanted me to be loved. And what they couldn't stand was that I found love without them. I can still remember the look in Logan's eyes as he set the laptop down on the decor table near the stage. He's usually calm, composed, the type who always keeps it together. But that night, I saw in him a quiet rage, not from impulse, but from the pain of watching someone he loves be trampled on so many times and still try to smile through it. I think we should let people know, Logan said, his voice low, each word hitting the hardwood floor like a weight. No long explanations. Just the truth. No one gets to call you too sensitive anymore. I looked around the ballroom. Friends, colleagues, neighbors, and his relatives still chatting, raising glasses, talking about the beautiful ceremony. Laughter and clinking echoed steadily, like everything was perfect. But I knew if I stayed silent again, if I shrank back once more to avoid ruining the mood, I might never find the strength to step out of the shadow my family cast. "We'll show it," I said, locking eyes with Logan. He nodded. No questions asked. We walked over to the AV booth, where the big screen was being prepared to play the memory montage Logan's friend had put together, originally meant to kick off the dancing. I handed the technician the video file from the security footage and explained clearly, "Just play the clip from our apartment that morning. No narration, no background music. Just the truth." As the ballroom lights dimmed, a few guests thought it was the memory video and returned to their tables or stepped back in from the balcony. I heard murmurs ripple across the room. I stood at the center of the hall, Logan's hand holding mine. The screen lit up. No wedding photos. No candles, no flowers. Just footage of Amber, my mother, and Chloe walking into my apartment. Every gesture, every word captured clearly by the overhead camera. The entire hall fell silent at Chloe's first line. "She doesn't need that wedding dress. Do you really think Logan will show up?" Then came Amber's scoff, followed by my mother saying, "Don't mess things up too much. Make sure you put everything back afterward." No one in the room laughed. No one turned to whisper. Every person, from my colleagues in Seattle to the neighbor who had lived next door to me for 18 years in Salem, stared at the screen. When Chloe opened my old notebook and read my private thoughts aloud like it was a joke, an older woman behind me gasped, "Oh my God." I stood there, not bowing my head. Not shedding a tear. I had cried enough over the years. Today I simply stood still, allowing everyone to finally witness what I had endured alone for far too long. When the video ended, the screen went black. No one spoke for a few seconds. Then a slow clap rose from the right side. It was Logan's mother. She walked toward me and pulled me into a hug. "You did the right thing," she whispered. "You chose the light." Others began standing. Several people came over to hold my hand, touch my shoulder, say simple yet powerful words. "We believe you. You didn't deserve that. You're so brave." One of my father's old friends, Walter, stepped up on stage and took the microphone. "I've known the Dawson family since Kaylee was in kindergarten. But I never realized that the quietest child would be the strongest. Today, Kaylee taught us something. Sometimes the truth doesn't need to be spoken. It just needs to be seen." I gripped Logan's hand. He looked up at me, his eyes soft. We didn't need to say anything more. We understood each other better than ever. My parents weren't there. Neither was Amber. But I didn't feel like anything was missing. I just felt light. Light, as if a heavy shadow had finally been lifted off my chest after all these years. Everyone in the hall stood up. Not out of politeness. Not out of pity. But because they had seen the truth. And sometimes truth alone is enough to show who truly belongs in your life. 3 days after the wedding, the footage from my home camera spread across community groups in Salem. I didn't need to explain or respond. The video showing Amber, my mother, and Chloe casually invading my personal space said it all. Every expression, every dismissive remark became undeniable proof. Comments began appearing under the post. Can't believe a real mother and sister would do that. The bride just got married and they're rifling through her things, mocking her. That's terrifying. My parents' bookstore, once a cherished symbol of the old Salem neighborhood, suddenly became the center of public outrage. People started turning away. An elderly woman who had shopped there weekly posted a video saying, "I've come here for nearly 20 years, but after what I saw, I can't step inside that place again." I didn't start a boycott. I didn't say a word. But the community chose to stand on the side of what was right. Chloe was fired from her job just 2 days after the video spread. I heard the news from an old friend from Stanford. They reviewed her entire access history, my friend said. Turns out she had tried accessing a client's personal email from a work device. This wasn't her first offense. I didn't feel happy. But I didn't feel sorry either. Amber was different. Though she kept silent after the wedding, I heard from one of her old friends that her new boyfriend, a young lawyer from Portland, had cut things off. He said he couldn't believe she would treat her own sister like that, the friend told me, still shocked. He said if someone can lie to family, how could they ever be honest with anyone else? One morning while I was having coffee with Logan on the balcony, my phone rang. I saw the old house number. It was my dad. I picked up and stayed silent. "Kaylee," he said, his voice rough and low. "Your mom and I, we really didn't know that happened. We didn't think Amber would do that." I closed my eyes, feeling each heartbeat in my chest. "Well, now you do," I said, my voice no longer angry, just tired. "And knowing is enough." There was silence on the other end. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I didn't answer right away. I thought about the hundreds of times I sent money to help my parents, paying medical bills, fixing the roof, only to be told, Amber already dropped it off. I thought about all my unanswered texts, the ignored invites to visit, the wedding invitations my mom only replied to with, "We'll check our schedule." I didn't offer forgiveness. I didn't hang up either. I just sat there, silent, letting him feel the distance between us. The distance they had created themselves through years of neglect and silence when I needed them most. A few days later, I heard the bookstore was temporarily closed. Not because of bankruptcy, but because my mother couldn't handle the stares from neighbors, the whispers from loyal customers, or the printed screenshots of the video taped across their glass windows. Model family? I didn't feel triumphant. Just, like an old chapter had finally turned. A chapter closed without the need for more anger or blame. And now I could begin writing a new one, on my own terms, without needing anyone's approval or acceptance. A year later, I stood by the wide window of our small apartment in Seattle, holding a baby girl who weighed just under 7 pounds but felt like the whole universe in my arms. Her name is Grace. Grace Dawson Parker. We chose that name not just for its beauty but for its meaning. Grace, gentleness, light, the unexpected gift of forgiveness after years of pain. Logan rested a hand on my shoulder, as gentle as a breath. That's always been his way, never pushing into my pain, just being there when I needed him. And when I told him I wanted to name our daughter Grace, he nodded without hesitation. "Because she's the only thing that carries no shadow from the past," he said. "And you deserve to start fresh." Thought I was strong. But nothing could prepare me for the moment I held my child to my chest, felt her breath, smelled her soft skin, and realized I had an unconditional bond. No one was there to tell me to be more graceful like Amber, to care more about appearances, or to try harder. No one called me too stubborn, too cold, or difficult. My baby only knows me as mom. And to her, that's enough. One quiet afternoon, while Grace napped in her crib and Logan brewed coffee in the kitchen, I opened my laptop and began to write. Not out of anger. Not to accuse anyone. Just to write, as someone who had lived through enough, and now wanted to name the past in the gentlest way she could. Title: Why No One from My Family Was at My Wedding. I wrote about the 3-tiered cake that looked like something out of a painting, about my husband, the man who had walked through war zones but still placed his entire world in the palm of my hand. I wrote about the phone that buzzed during the ceremony, and the video that turned my life in a direction no one saw coming. I wrote about the heavy silence in the eyes of our guests as the truth lit up the screen, And about the one sentence I spoke to my father, now you know. The article was published in a special section of the Mind Matters website, a space for stories about mental health and the journey to living truthfully. I submitted it with no expectations. But just 3 days later, my inbox was overflowing. Not with judgment, but with understanding. I'm the middle child in a family where every eye was always on my older brother. I know what it feels like to be invisible. Thank you for saying what I've never had the courage to write down. I got married without anyone from my family showing up. But I've never told a soul. Your piece made me feel seen. There was one email I read over and over again. A woman named Linda, 64 years old, wrote, I spent my entire life trying to please my parents, giving up my career and my happiness. It wasn't until my mother passed that I realized I was never truly acknowledged. I wish I'd had your courage. I replied, I'm not brave. I just stopped being afraid of the truth. Logan read every line of the article with me. When I reached the end, he placed his hand gently, firmly on my back. I didn't lose a family, I wrote. I just stopped searching for love in a place it never existed. When I finished that sentence, Logan didn't say a word. He just leaned down and kissed my hair. And for the first time in my life, I felt peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because I no longer carried the burden of seeking something from people who never intended to give it. My family now is Logan. It's Grace. It's the quiet of late afternoons by the window, the soft laughter that drifts from the kitchen, the tiny hands clinging tightly to my fingers as if the whole world rests in that one touch. And I know I've truly started over. Not because someone gave me permission. Not because I was validated. But simply because I allowed myself to be fully me and to live in what I now know is real love. What about you? If you were in my shoes, would you have the strength to walk away from a family that refused to see your worth? To start over even if it's late but still worth it? Have you ever felt cast aside in the very home where you were raised? Share your story with me in the comments below. I genuinely want to hear it because sometimes, a single moment of understanding can soothe even the deepest wounds. Life doesn't always offer us easy beginnings. But every person deserves love. Not because of roles they fill or expectations they meet, but simply because of who they are. If my story resonated with you in any way, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. There are so many real-life stories still waiting to be told. Honest, emotional slices of family, pain, and healing. Stay with me and together we'll keep writing the chapters that matter. Raw, human, and filled with hope.